Welcome to the Courage to Live podcast. My name's Josh Bitsko. I'm a retired police captain with 24 years of experience. And currently, I travel the country and teach resilience and mindset to first responders, and specifically on how to respond to critical incidents and manage the difficult emotions that come with that. So, today we're going to talk about how to change culture inside a company or an agency when it comes to mental health. And through my experience in policing, police officers are very difficult when it comes to talking about our emotions and our feelings, and also our own mental health and our mental health struggles. And I do think that it's not just police officers; it's humans that have a hard time starting therapy or starting their own mental health journey, but even having the conversations about it. I mean, we've all been there when we have a friend that's struggling, and you ask them, "Hey, are you okay?" And a question like that, usually the response is, "Yep, I'm good," and then you move on. It's definitely more nuanced than that. And to create a culture inside a company or inside your even your friend group is how do you check up on each other? How do you ensure that if somebody's really struggling, they can get the help they need? I've taken so many classes on police mental health and wellness through my experience as the wellness captain for the Las Vegas Police Department, building a wellness bureau. Part of that was my own education because when I was thrown into that role, I wasn't as experienced in the wellness and mental health. I had just been through a lot of trauma, and that was one of the reasons I was selected for that position. And every class I took, they'd spend a long time talking about the problem. They'd talk about police suicide, and they really would just focus on the problem and what causes it. But when it came to how to fix it, how to fix the mental health of a group or, a police agency, there wasn't a lot of meat there. They would really focus on if you're having trouble or if you're struggling, reach out. Well, I can tell you, as somebody that's been at very low points in my life, the last thing I was going to do when I was at my lowest is reach out. So I'm a huge proponent of reaching in. And if we're going to change the culture in an agency or a company, oftentimes we wait for leadership to come in and do it. Hey, we're waiting for a police department to come up with this wellness bureau and fix all the problems. But a lot of times it's the people that make up the workforce that can have the most impact. And what I mean by that is if we're going to sit around and wait for some magic program that's going to fix the mental health of a large group, a police department, let's say, it's just not going to happen. We can have the resources available, leadership can focus on mental health, have the right conversations, but when it comes down to it, the brass tacks of it, of you have somebody around you that's struggling, if you just sit and wait for them to quote unquote reach out, you're going to be waiting a long time most often. So, how do we reach those people? It's reaching in, it's creating the culture among ourselves as employees, as cops, as firefighters, and having the courage to have a hard conversation. Because at the end of the day, we all know when somebody isn't right. We may not know specifically what we're seeing that makes that person, like that person to me is struggling right now. It could be they're showing up late. It could be a big change in just their attitude. Somebody that was always overly positive is now overly negative. And so if we're seeing or perceiving these changes in somebody, how do we have that conversation? How do we say, you know what? I see that you're struggling. Is everything okay at home? Or is everything going good with you? And then you get the, yeah, good, I'm good, I'm fine. Because when you're in that lowest point, you're worried about you have a lot to lose. If I tell people I'm struggling, maybe I've been contemplating suicide, maybe I'm taking steps towards that end, then you worry that you have a lot to lose at that point. You worry that, I could now, on top of all the struggles, I could lose my job. I could not work. I could not work overtime. And I'm going to get committed and I'm going to be away from my family. I'm going to further impact me financially because the bills that come along with that. So a lot of times people their go-to is, yes, I'm okay. So the big thing that I talk about is how do you give somebody permission to feel what they're going to feel? Well, that comes through shared experiences, that comes from being vulnerable yourself. And when someone responds with, "Well, I'm okay," well, the next question could be, "How are you sleeping?" Because a lot of times when you're stressed, when you the anxiety is oftentimes insurmountable, sleep is the first thing to go, and that can open the door. Well, you know what? I'm not sleeping so well. Okay, so then your response is, "Well, tell me more about that." And your goal at this point is to listen, to not judge somebody, and to ultimately open that person up to having a real conversation. And that might take being vulnerable yourself. I used to be that I'm okay guy. Like, even though I was struggling, I'd been through several traumatic incidents. I lost a brother to suicide, a father to cancer, was involved in officer involved shootings, and all of this stuff in a really short time. And everyone asked me, "Man, you've been through a lot. Are you doing okay?" Well, yeah, I'm good. But I really wasn't. And it wasn't until I was at my lowest and I had a friend, and this friend is now my wife, tell me, "Hey, you don't seem right. And let's have a conversation about it." So she had the courage to have the hard conversation with me. And that started my entire journey. And I've evolved into a person that can stand in front of a group of people and be vulnerable and talk about my own problems. And what I've learned in doing that is when I'm vulnerable about my own struggles and my own mental health problems, then the people I'm talking to are more apt to open up about it. So, in closing, you can't wait. We can't wait for some magic program to come in and solve all our problems. We can help each other out in ways that we really need that help by having those hard conversations and having the courage to have an awkward conversation with a friend, a coworker, a family member, and stepping up and really giving them permission to feel that what they're going to feel, because once they start talking about it and it becomes more real, then we get into the next steps. And I'm going to do another podcast on what those next steps, and you have someone coming to you for help. What are those steps? Where do you then point them when they're asking for help? So thank you for listening today. Please subscribe to our podcast or leave a review. And I appreciate you taking the time and the 8 or 9 minutes to listen to us today. So thank you.